The rain had a way of remembering things people tried to forget. It fell softly over the city, blurring neon lights into watercolor streaks, soaking streets that had heard too many footsteps leaving and not enough returning. On nights like this, love never stayed quiet. It echoed. Wang Yibo stood under the awning of an empty cafe, helmet tucked under his arm, jacket damp at the shoulders. The city buzzed around him, yet everything felt distant, muted, like the world had lowered its volume out of respect for the ache in his chest. He hadn't planned to stop here, but his feet remembered before his mind did. This cafe used to be theirs. Across the glass window, he saw it, a familiar silhouette. Time didn't slow. It shattered. Xiao Zhan sat by the window, fingers wrapped around a porcelain cup, eyes lowered as if the universe itself weighed too much to look at. His hair was longer now, softer. His face carried the quiet elegance of someone who had learned how to smile without meaning it. Yibo's breath caught. Years. It had been years. They had once promised forever with a confidence only the young and fearless possessed. Back then, love felt indestructible. Back then, they didn't know the cost of choosing each other in a world that demanded silence. Xiao Zhan looked up. Their eyes met. And just like that, the rain became background noise to a storm neither had survived. Memories flooded in, too fast, too sharp. Late-night rehearsals where laughter filled empty studios. Shared headphones on midnight drives. Secret glances backstage, fingers brushing for half a second too long. The kind of love that never needed words because it lived in the spaces between them. They had loved in fragments, in stolen moments, in pauses, and eventually they had broken, quietly, painfully, because loving loudly had never been an option. Yibo stepped inside before fear could stop him. The bell above the door chimed, small and insignificant, yet it echoed like a confession. Xiao Zhan stood immediately. Yibo. His voice was softer than memory, but it still struck the same place in Yibo's heart. I didn't know you were back, Xiao Zhan continued, eyes searching his face like he was afraid the moment might disappear. I didn't know I missed you this much, Yibo almost said, but didn't. They sat today. Silence stretched, heavy and fragile. Outside, the rain kept falling, as if the sky refused to move on. You look different, Xiao Zhan said finally. So do you. A smile flickered between them, brief, cautious. The kind of smile people wear when they're standing on emotional landmines. They talk about safe things. Work, travel, the city, anything except the truth crouching between them, waiting to be acknowledged. Until Xiao Zhan broke. Do you ever think about us? Yibo didn't pretend. Every day. The words landed without drama, without embellishment. Just honesty. Xiao Zhan's eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. He had learned not to. I told myself we ended because it was necessary, Xiao Zhan said. But necessary doesn't mean it stopped hurting. Yibo's jaw tightened. They both remembered the night it ended. No shouting, no accusations. Just two people sitting across from each other, hands trembling, realizing that love wasn't always enough to survive the world they lived in. They had chosen distance to protect each other, and distance had nearly destroyed them. I thought time would scatter the feeling, Xiao Zhan whispered. But it only scattered us. Yibo reached across the table, stopped himself halfway. Some habits were hard to unlearn. Maybe love doesn't disappear, Yibo said quietly. Maybe it just waits. The rain slowed. Outside, the city exhaled. They walked together afterward, side by side but not touching, like they were relearning how to exist in the same space. Streetlights cast long shadows that almost merged, then pulled apart again. At the corner where they used to say goodbye every night, Xiao Zhan stopped. This is where we always... I know, Yibo said. Another silence. This one felt different. Hopeful. Terrifying. We can't go back, Xiao Zhan said. I don't want to, Yibo replied. I want to move forward. Even if it's slow, even if it's quiet. Xiao Zhan studied him, searching for hesitation. He found none. Love had scattered them once. But fate, persistent, stubborn fate, had brought them back to the same street, under the same sky, with hearts that still recognized each other. Xiao Zhan nodded. Then don't disappear again. I won't. They didn't hug. They didn't promise forever. But as they walked in opposite directions, both knew this wasn't another ending. It was a beginning, gentler, braver, real. Above them, the clouds parted. The rain stopped, and scattered love, after years of silence, finally found its way home. The city did not sleep that night. Neither did Wang Ibo. He stood by his apartment window, helmet resting untouched on the floor, city lights blinking like distant memories refusing to fade. Meeting Xiao Zhan again had reopened a door he had spent years convincing himself was sealed shut. He pressed his palm against the glass. Some loves don't end. They scatter, like ash carried by the wind, settling into places you don't expect, waiting for the smallest spark to burn again. Across the city, Xiao Zhan sat on the edge of his bed, phone in his hand, screen dark. He had typed Ibo's name more times than he cared to admit, only to erase it every single time. Tonight, the name felt heavier, closer, alive. Their reunion had been brief, restrained, but the silence afterward screamed louder than any argument they'd ever had. Xiao Zhan closed his eyes. He remembered when love was simple. Back then, Ibo had been all sharp edges and restless energy, pretending not to care while caring too much. Xiao Zhan had been the calm, smiling, understanding, always reaching out first. Together, they had balanced each other in a way that felt accidental and inevitable at the same time. The memory shifted. Late nights in empty studios, shared umbrellas under sudden rain, glances that said I see you in words were too dangerous. They had loved quietly because the world had never offered them another choice. But quiet love still breaks when the pressure becomes unbearable. The day they separated replayed like an old film reel. They hadn't cried at first. They sat opposite each other, hands clenched, voices steady in a way that felt unnatural. We're hurting each other, Xiao Zhan had said. We're protecting each other, Ibo replied. Both were true. That was the tragedy. Now, years later, fate had placed them back into the same frame, and neither of them knew whether it was mercy or cruelty. The next morning came too quickly. Ibo rode through the city with no destination, the roar of his bike cutting through thoughts he didn't want to finish. He passed familiar streets, familiar corners, places where fragments of Xiao Zhan still existed. He stopped without realizing why. A small park. They used to sit here when life felt overwhelming. Back then, Xiao Zhan would talk about dreams, roles he wanted to play, stories he wanted to tell, while Ibo listened, pretending not to memorize every word. Now the bench was empty, but the feeling wasn't. Still following me around, a voice said softly. Ibo turned. Xiao Zhan stood a few steps away, hands in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. Guess we both remember too much, Ibo replied. They sat, leaving a careful distance between them. The air felt charged, like a storm holding its breath. Do you think we met again by accident? Xiao Zhan asked. Ibo shook his head. No. Xiao Zhan laughed quietly. I told myself I was over you. I moved cities, changed routines, built a life that didn't include your shadow. And? Ibo asked. And then I saw you, and everything fell apart. Ibo looked at him then, really looked. Xiao Zhan wasn't broken. He was composed. But there was a weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The kind that came from loving something you were never allowed to fully keep. I thought loving you was the hardest thing I'd ever do, Xiao Zhan continued. But letting you go was worse. Ibo swallowed. He wanted to reach out. He didn't. We're different people now, Ibo said. But the feeling, it hasn't changed. The wind stirred fallen leaves around their feet, scattered, restless. Maybe love doesn't demand possession, Xiao Zhan said slowly. Maybe it just asks for honesty. Ibo nodded. Then here's mine. I never stopped choosing you. I just chose silence instead. That confession lingered between them, fragile and exposed. Xiao Zhan stood first. I don't know where this leads, he said, but I don't want us to pretend we're strangers again. Ibo stood with him. We won't. They didn't make promises. They didn't define anything. But as they walked away from the park together, steps falling into rhythm, something shifted. Scattered love was finding its shape again, not as it once was, but as it needed to be now. Slow, careful, real. Some stories don't restart loudly. They resume, softly, right where the heart left off. Sparkles, if you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Let me know what you want next. Happy ending, emotional twist, or deeper continuation. And don't forget to subscribe for more beautiful stories like this, Dizzy.